Well, hi, Jenna.
Well, hi, Shelby.
How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. Happy to be back for the last installment, part 3 of A House of Flame and Shadow.
Yay! Finishing out HOFAS.
Yeah, the last part.
It's been a long book.
It has been a long book. We already have 3 other episodes out on this book. We have general thoughts, part 1 and part 2. So if you haven't listened to those first, I highly recommend going back and listening to that and then coming back to this episode.
Perfect. All right. So on that note, spoilers for basically all SJM.
Yep.
And yeah, let's finish out some HOFAS.
Yeah. Let's get after
Yay. So in part 3 now, basically where we're starting is Bryce and Hunt are sitting up atop of a hill and having their big conversation about how Bryce thinks that she doesn't know if she can do this and she's doubting herself. And then we have our other friends, Ethan and Hypaxia, and they're coming from...
Lunathion?
Thank you. I was like, I cannot remember that city for the life of me.
It's like the possession thing from the last episode.
That's so funny. Yep. I always like just get these brain
Tip of your
farts.
tongue. Yeah. Tip of your tongue. Yep.
So they're coming from the Nathion and they're coming to Avalon and they're just noticing that it looks a little bit different than they thought it was going to.
Yeah, because this is all happening right after Bryce has done her magical, we've killed both of the Autumn King and the Avalon King, and the whole island is like less gray and is becoming all green, and there's life coming back to it, and the other islands are popping back up because Bryce has basically freed the magic, I guess, or I don't know.
She had gotten the magic from the ground.
And I didn't totally understand all of those plot lines, I'm going to be honest.
there was a lot of different plot lines.
Yeah, but yes, that's kind of where we're at. And everybody's kind of congregating in Avalon.
Right. I thought it was really interesting that when, now talking about her getting the magic from the ground, it didn't really make sense how she was like, oh, I just knew that this is where the magic is going to come from and it's going to complete my magic. And I was like, where are you getting this?
Well, I guess I kind of have that, they keep saying, like calls to like and whatever. Yeah. There might be a certain level of like instinct that she was relying on to, I don't know how to do it or where to do it in that moment. But yeah.
Yeah, I still thought it was just like a little too convenient.
Yeah. So what did you think of the whole... like Bryce having the crown of stars multiple times in the book? She has it kind of right in the beginning of part 3. Hunt says that he notices that. But there's also, and that the night blooming flowers are like blooming around her right as she's kind of, I don't know, really feeling out the magic on Avalon.
Yeah.
But then again, much later in the book, he mentions the crown of stars looking like it's around her head when she's like talking about being in charge. Just curious what your thoughts were on that.
I didn't even think twice about it.
No.
And I'm like, maybe I should have.
Oh, I don't know. I do think that we see in ACOTAR, Rhys kind of have a similar situation, right?
Oh.
Doesn't he kind of have that happen or no?
Maybe I just glanced over it,
I don't know.
But I don't remember.
Yeah. I was just interesting that, because it doesn't seem like something that she's intentionally calling to her. It just is there. And so I'm assuming it's supposed to be representative of her whole dusk court, twilight, stars, whatever. But it was just after learning Rhys's familial background, right? And now knowing that her and Rhys's family lines connect at some point in the past. Yeah. Then the fact that, when Bryce and Hunt are banging and she's shining like starlight, like how Farah did, Farah having Rhys's powers, and then like the stars, the crown of stars, which for some reason I remembered Rhys having too. It was just interesting that then I think I was drawing more parallels between Rhys and Bryce.
No, I actually really like that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I feel like maybe we'll get more in the next ACOTAR book too.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of brings up too, like, what did you think about the power sharing between Hunt and Bryce?
Yeah, I felt like the only reason that mattered, that they were doing all of this power sharing, was for the one moment with the mask in the end of, like, during the big fight scene. And Bryce has disappeared through the portal that she's opened, and Hunt is able to put on the mask for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And then it falls off. So I feel like that was the only reason it mattered that they could do this power sharing. So I didn't super like it. I don't know. I mean, we've talked about it in the previous episodes that maybe we weren't as invested in Bryce and Hunt's relationship.
Which was so unfortunate, though. Like, it just... And we've had a lot of people comment on some of our posts on social media that people just, like, were not invested as much in this couple.
Yeah. So I didn't really feel like the power sharing mattered that much.
Yeah, I agree. I saw somebody comment on one of our TikToks, and they were like... they were saying that Bryce and Hunt being able to power share like that, like, it showed that they weren't fated mates because he was literally, his power was made for her. I do think I wonder if it's less about like them and their relationship, but Bryce talks about that mentally when she's like fighting the Asteri right towards the end. Yes.
And she sucks up Regelus's power. And because she's like the battery I am, I sucked up that power or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it did make me wonder if it was less to do with this like sweet bonding moment between them.
Yes.
And more a matter of how Bryce uses power, or how she can pull power. And so I don't think there's been any other moments besides with Hunt that she's wanted to share back. And so that's why I kind of wonder, because the first time that it happens, she has his lightning, but not vice versa. Like, I think it happens that way first and then vice versa. So I do kind of wonder if it's more just about her and who she is.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that.
Yeah.
It just brings me back to the conversation with the Princess from Hell, because they were like, oh, you have all this power. Like, you were like made for when she comes around.
Yeah. Because they did say that he was made for her in that way, like basically to be her private warrior person.
Which is crazy.
And they were like, we didn't mean for you guys to be mates, but sweet, that's cool.
Good job, guys. And it was funny because I felt like SJM kind of just put in there where she was like, oh yeah, like you guys are still mates, but I'm like, I'm still not there.
Yeah. Do you think that their story is really going to be done with this book, and that Crescent City 4 will move on to different couples in the same way that Silver Flames moved on to different couples?
I hope so. Although I'm kind of thinking that House of Many Waters is going to be next.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm excited for that.
Because you think it'll be Therian?
Yeah. And I just wasn't a major fan of him in this book. And so I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. But thinking back to Akatar, I wasn't pumped for Nesta's story, and look at how I fell in love with her.
True. Well, let's talk about Therian in the second part a little bit then, because I had a few things I think maybe that were more interesting. One of them with Sathia, is that how you say her name?
I said Sathia.
That's what I don't even remember if it's Flynn's sister, Declan's sister. I don't even they're the same person. one of the boys that's friends with Rue.
They're literally the same in my head.
Yeah. But his sister, the one that Therian marries, I thought how she was smooth with the River Queen was really interesting, because it shows how she was really raised in court and understands the politics side of it, and she kind of knew how to play the River Queen and play into that, until the River Queen's daughter shows up and is just hysterical about Therian marrying someone else.
Yeah.
So tell me about your reaction when Therian says, oh, I'll divorce her and I'll marry you if you guys do this thing.
I went jaw on the floor. I was like, what the fuck, Therian? I was like, you literally just got yourself into this position, which I actually think Sathia would be really good for him.
I agree. I had actually would have kind of liked that storyline a little bit, because it was, I don't know, a marriage of convenience type thing, right? Just to get out of a situation.
Right.
But I felt like I could see there was a little bit of a spark there between them, or I was reading too far into it, but I saw a little bit of a spark between them.
Absolutely.
That maybe they could grow into actually being good partners together. Yeah. So
that's how I felt too.
Therian constantly wishy-washy the whole book, can't stick to one side.
I know,
he's driving me nuts.
Oh my God, he was driving me absolutely nuts. And then this was just like literally another point where he's like, guess what? I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to do something irrational again. And it was like, what are you doing, dude? It made me so mad.
But it was cool. I think that's why it was my favorite part. It was cool to see Sathia be... Yeah.
I don't know.
And the fact that she writes that note and kind of runs off towards the end of the book, like after she's seen her ex-boyfriend, who's now the Viper Queen's bodyguard, I guess, or one of those guards.
Made like a motion in his face that he was like, oh, I remember you. Like, oh my God. Like trying so hard to like stay like in his like
role.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if that'll come into the next book too, because I feel like that wasn't closed out then. That,
I agree.
There was something going on with Therian and Sathia, and Sathia says, oh, it was my ordeal to lose him.
Yes.
And that was that big of a deal to have lost him to the Viper Queen. And yeah, so I'm kind of hoping that maybe that'll come back in the next Crescent City, and maybe Sathia will end up being not an important side character, kind of like an Ethan or something.
Yeah.
So that was how I took that one. But
what if she becomes the main love interest for Therian?
I could see that too. Yeah. That was where I thought it maybe was going originally. And I know that she dipped off because she's like, oh, I love him. But maybe she'll come around back to her actual husband.
Right. It's just so crazy that they're married. Like, it's so weird. Oh, gosh. I just thought that whole Therian in this book. So I don't know. We'll see what I think is going to happen in the next books. But I did see she's writing ACOTAR 6.
Yeah. And she's been posting some pictures on her Instagram that people have been reading really hard into also.
I know. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I haven't looked closely enough at them yet. I've been out of the news, and I haven't seen any of her recent video or interviews. Yeah. Well, kind of on the note of going from Therian to Ethan, since they're together at the beginning of this book, let's talk about Sigrid and Ethan and kind of that whole bit.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that Jessica and Hypaxia, when they're looking into the parasite and they try to look in the Reaper and they compare it to what they find in everybody else. And she says, specific quote, I didn't sense anything like that anyways. I didn't sense anything living in him at all. And having that line in there and knowing that Sigrid basically, sucked up the soul of the Prime and then ran off. I'm curious if that's going to come back around, of understanding that from Hypaxia's scientific point of view, there's truly nothing living in a Reaper. And I think that maybe gives us a little more background of, I don't know, the role that they play within society, and especially without the Underking being there.
Right.
I'm wondering how or if that's going to come back at all, to see how are they being controlled, or how are they moving around, whose will is it if they aren't actually alive in any way, shape, or form.
Well, and like, why did the Underking, who had said that he was from another world, and we can assume it was Throne of Glass world, why is he the one that's in charge of them? And now that Hypaxia is in charge, like, is she going to have the same kind of say? Or is the Reaper going to be like, is it like a black hole? Or do we think that the kid like hadn't been sucking up souls? Or I'm like, I also wonder how that is going to come into play, because do they have to live off of them, off of these souls that they suck up?
That's my understanding. That's like what they feed off of. So I guess I wonder what happens if they don't suck up souls, if they disappear, like disintegrate, or if they would be fine and just hungry. I don't know.
I know.
Well, yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. I did think the little bit of background we get about the Underking before he dies was a fun insight, kind of to your point, into it being Throne of Glass, because he says that he came from the Shifter's world when they crossed, and that he had come to Midgard because it was better suited to my needs than the caves and burrows I was confined to. So who do you think, or what do you think he was in the Throne of Glass world?
You know, I was thinking about it while I was reading it, and I don't know.
It's been too many years since I've read it, so I'm probably not remembering it right. Were there like some big spidery things? I kind of thought
they were literally spiders.
He felt like that maybe, because I feel like it's too easy to say that he's Velg, you know, and I don't think the Velg were from there anyways, right? They had just showed up in whatever the Throne of Glass world is called. I'm not remembering the name of it right now, but yeah. So I wondered if maybe he was one of the spiders or something, because they were in the caves and burrows of like the mountains in that world.
Oh, that's a really good, interesting theory. But I'm so sad because, like it happens in the rest of this book, he's dead.
I feel like all of our foes have died by the end of this book.
I'm like, but wait, we need more time. We only got the snippet of information we were trying to get from you. So what the heck?
And there were multiple kill scenes that were like that in this book, where they're just starting to talk and then they die. Because I think the same thing happened a little bit with both of the Fae Kings.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they're dead, and we're not going to learn any more information from them.
And Vesperus.
I was going to say with Vesperus, that happened when they were in Prythian with Vesperus. It also happened when just before Bryce does the double swords into which Asteria is it that she gets that way? Polaris. Right when she's doing that to Polaris, he's been straight yapping. He's been telling all sorts of stuff of being
like, is like, shut up.
Yeah, and so I feel like we were starting to get a little bit of information there, and then all of a sudden he's gone, and that just seemed like the story of this book, that
it really did.
Every time we're going to start to learn something, then they kill him.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, how is that going to continue? Are we going to continue to learn more information? Like, what's going to happen here? So, more on Ethan, now that he is Prime, and Hypaxia is like, guess what? I have the antidote. He takes it.
He takes the antidote before he becomes Prime.
Oh, because it was him and
Hypaxia were kind of working together in the House of Flame and Shadow. I guess that must have been where they were, right? In Jessica's office.
Right, yeah.
And so they were working on it down there, and Hypaxia takes it first, passes out, comes back, and is like, wow, dude, this is crazy.
I forgot about that.
You gotta take the shot.
You gotta do it.
So, actually, that's not true. I think she actually probably didn't want him to take it, but he did anyways. But it's more fun to think of it that way.
You're right. She's like, be careful. We don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and he slams it anyways.
I know.
Like the frat boy he is.
Oh my God. Surprise.
Oh, don't listen to too much TikTok at all.
Not at all.
No, and it's kind of right after he takes that. That's when he turns around and I was like, I gotta go to the house that has all of the wolves in it.
Like the wolves' den.
Yeah, I don't remember. The den, I guess. Yeah, there's a name for it. But that's when he says he's got to go to the den, and he runs there and he talks to Perry. And it's like, hey, you got to gather everybody together. I gotta tell you guys something crazy. You're never going to believe what's going on in the Bone Quarter.
Yeah. And
as she gathers all of these wolves there, and they realize that it's him that's going to talk, I really liked their reaction. Like all of the wolves' reaction of being really like, who is this guy to think that he can talk to us right now? Like, Perry, why would you even let him in? And then having Sigrid and Sabine and the astronomer all show up at the same time. I really liked, that was one of the only scenes that I really enjoyed, like start to finish, how that played out. Yeah,
I did too. I thought it was really interesting.
What did you think of his like speech, Ethan's like speech and everything during that?
Lame.
Did you think it was lame?
Yeah. But I just think Ethan's kind of lame.
Fair.
And so I was like, what? I was like, why do you think that you can just all of a sudden step up?
I just maybe love Perry more though, because I don't think Perry came up really much at all through the other books. I mean, she was kind of there. She was the one that kind of checked on Bryce, and maybe was the only one that sort of tried to keep that tie even when things went to shit. Yeah. And so we knew about her a little bit, but yeah, her stepping up, even though she's an Omega, right? Like she's kind of the bottom of the totem pole. Yeah. But she steps up enough to not only gather the wolves, but also talk back when people are shitting on Ethan while he's talking and not wanting to listen to him. And she's like, hey, I want to hear what he has to say. And then after she takes the cure also, and Ethan says that her scent has changed.
I was just going to ask you about
that. Yeah. So I guess, what do you think that meant?
I think they're mates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was noticing her scent when he walked in, and then he was like, oh, it changed. But I'm still, like, I'm noticing it so much. So I think either that or something's different with Perry. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I also could see potentially them being mates just because of their interactions also. Yeah. But I think Perry is also the only one that we've gotten an example of the cure not being permanent, because hypaxia does say it's supposed to be temporary. Yeah. And Ethan says her scent changes and then it goes back to what it was before. Yeah. And so I think she's going to be the first one that we notice the parasite come back maybe. Yep. So that was part of it. But also because we saw her stand up in front of all of the rest of the wolves, I wonder if the parasite is suppressing the fact that maybe she's also an alpha or something.
Interesting.
That's kind of what I wondered, because her attitude and how she reacts doesn't seem 100% submissive. So
that's a really good observation.
It would be cool to see Perry step up and be more of a badass and maybe more of a prominent character now that we've lost multiple key players in the Wolf's Den.
Yep. Very interesting. That's a good observation. Oh my God. Well, I was trying to think, because about the scent changing, I didn't think about maybe her stepping up into a bigger role. My mind was just automatically like, mates.
Sense mates. Yes. Yeah. And maybe that's it. Maybe I was reading more into it.
No, I like that.
It was just because her attitude seemed different.
Yeah, it definitely did.
And because I think, so Sabine is gone. I think Emily is going to have to kind of like step aside a little bit because she was so against Ethan, and now that Ethan is prime. Yep. He needs a couple people that are going to be his like go-to betas or whatever, like his, right? Like, right hand. Yeah, his right-hand men. And so I wonder if she's going to end up stepping more the same way that he had to step into prime, even though he wasn't ready. I wonder if she'll need to step up into having a leadership role, even if she's not ready.
And I hope so. I hope she does, because I like her. I like her. I felt like even though we only got like a snippet of her, I actually really liked her in this book. So
I agree.
We'll see. I just think that after you mentioned that she's really the only one that we see that her scent changes, and so maybe she'll be the first one that like it starts to wear off. We don't see it in the rest of the book when anybody takes the antidote. It's been like a while.
Well, it's been a couple days.
It's been a couple of days, yeah. But like hers would have changed really quickly, but hasn't she had it for like the same amount of time that like Ethan has?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it. Maybe it wears off on different people at different timings. Like maybe it's not everybody. And so that's why I'm going to be curious. Because, and maybe I'm reading too far into that, but that's definitely how I saw the change of, he's like, hey, I noticed something different. She's back to what she was before. Yeah. And so I'm assuming that was related to the cure, because or vaccine. What do they even call it?
I think it was just
was it a cure? Antidote. That's the word I was looking for. Keep calling it the cure. It's not a cure. It's an antidote. But
that would be the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably more accurate. Antidote was the word I was looking for. I've been watching the Vampire Diaries again recently, so the cure is fresh on my mind.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's my comfort show.
Anyways, yeah. Because I'm assuming that'll be another plot line that, I mean, that's something else that's unfinished here that's going to come back up in the last Crescent City, and I guess potentially in the next ACOTAR, depending on if Bryce bleeding into the water introduced the parasite into a new world.
Oh my gosh, that will be so wild.
We talked about that in our last episode if you didn't listen to it, so go back and listen there if you want more details.
Which, like, if she introduces this parasite into a new world, just another villain type that ACOTAR is gonna have to deal with. I'm like, what the hell? And it's from a totally different world. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, on the note of the antidote, should talk about kind of some of the other people's reactions to the antidote.
Yeah, who do you want to start with?
Well, I thought Ethan summoning snow and being so amazed by that was kind of wild, especially because that snow and ice actually ended up being important.
Yes.
Because even if Hypaxia gets to say she's the leader of the House in Flame and Shadow from killing the Underking, Ethan's the one who froze him first, and then she kind of just knocks him down and shatters him. So it's really a tag team effort.
And Jessica's like, well, you technically killed him.
Yeah, she's like, it's you now.
It's you now.
Have fun, babe.
Which was wild that, like, hey, guess what? Here is a consequence that you didn't see coming. There you go.
Yeah. So that one was funny.
But you're right. Ethan did. And don't we see somebody in Throne of Glass summoning snow?
Do we?
I don't remember.
I mean, I think that's where he's supposed to be from.
Yeah, that's true. That we think the shifters are from the Throne of Glass world anyway.
Right.
And so now we're finding out that the wolves have this elemental magic, which is crazy. And I cannot wait to see what the different wolves have.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be really fun for sure.
That'll be so fun. Oh my gosh. So then I guess who takes it next after Ethan?
Doesn't have to be in order. I think Therian and Lydia both had certain face. Oh my god. If you're just listening, you missed Shelby's face just to the word Therian.
I'm like, huh.
But it is funny when he talks that he basically like lost control. This is so inappropriate of a comparison, but the way that Therian talks about how he like flooded the room or whatever, because he was like, all of a sudden there was so much water available and he just like didn't even know what to do with it, and kind of was like, it reminded me of like a teenage boy that's like,
oh my god,
about to bang for the first time, like jizzes in his pants. That's the equivalent. So sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this and hear that, but that was like the type of attitude that I had going on in my mind. I was like, oh my god, I don't know what to do with that.
Well, because then doesn't Lydia say you couldn't control it? Yeah. She's like, excuse me, like you couldn't have had a little bit more power over it.
So I thought that was so funny.
That was so funny. Oh my god.
Because he is like semi badass then in the major fight scene when he's like bringing the basically water from the river down the tunnels of the hallways and whatever. Cool. And so he's actually being helpful there with it. But just thinking about that initial reaction, that was the image I had in my mind.
And he almost drowned her friends.
Oh, he made an air bubble in it?
He did.
He got him.
Yeah.
But he did drop the antidotes because of it.
She's so stupid.
Oh, man.
Oh my god.
I just thought it was really funny.
I thought that was really funny too.
But what about Lydia? I guess you want to talk more about now what we learned about Lydia's powers and stuff?
Oh my god, because at the end of part 2, we start to see her in the caves, and there was something about how she had taken over somebody's fire. And
she had put out the fire that was around the king.
Yep, the Autumn King.
Yes.
Yep.
After he had already died, and so everybody was like, "Oh, that just magically went away."
They're like, "Cool, how did that happen? I don't know."
No, I don't think anybody even thought twice about it.
No,
at
they
the
didn't.
Moment. That's what was funny about it. She was like, "Haha, that was me."
Guess what? That was me. Literally the most badass character in HOFAS is Lydia. And so we find out she takes the antidote. She's got all of this firepower, and it reminded me of Aelin, but
absolutely
at her full power. Like her power was incredible.
Yeah. And there also is like a small comment about Lydia moving super fast, which I wondered if that was her winnowing, because when Rune is, I don't know, kind of playing chicken with Pollux, and he still has Lydia's sons, and he says something to the point of Rune is talking about Lydia, and he says, but Lydia ran swift as the wind, swifter than a bullet. Rune didn't understand what he saw next, how Lydia reached Bran in time. And then continues to talk about how she threw herself over her sons, knocking him to the ground as she burst into white hot flames. But just her moving fast, I wondered if that was her winnowing, if she can winnow like how Bryce can or something. I don't know. It's just something else that I noticed of speed being one of her powers.
Absolutely. I honestly questioned that too. I had that tabbed as well. And it would make sense, but it would also, we're seeing Akatar and Throne of Glass coming together,
right,
with like the fire and the winnowing, and so that would be so awesome to see those powers coming together.
Yeah, because Lydia just says she's from an old bloodline.
Yes,
and that's where this white hot flames comes from, and she can like burn people from the inside out, and they're just a shriveled husk after her, I guess.
Insane. And I feel like Throne of Glass, when like we don't there's not many times we get to see Aelin at her full power because she was suppressing it so much for so much of the series.
Well, the one time she kind of lets it go is when she's like on the ships and it kind of goes too far and then she feels really bad, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so now I feel like we're finally getting to see that in play again a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I like to see that. I liked that. And then Rune, I loved that he had the full shadow powers.
And healing.
Yeah,
because he heals Therian too. And he's like, I don't know where it came from, but I got this now.
I know.
So it was kind of fun to see all of the characters power up from the antidote. I thought that was really fun to read.
I did too. Oh, want to talk about Bryce in the portal?
Yeah.
So when she opens the portal, and one, I loved that Nessa was sitting there reading a book.
Yeah.
But I thought that interaction was a really vulnerable piece from Bryce.
Are you talking about the first time that she opens the portal there or the second time?
When she requests the mask from Nesta.
Yep.
So she opens and people think she's going to be opening this portal to hell. She ends up opening the portal to Prithian in Nesta's living room.
I did think it was cool that Bryce could change the location of it. I thought that was something to note in general.
Absolutely.
That she could control that.
And I couldn't wrap my head around how she did it.
Because she said that the portal in general was supposed to be to hell, but going through the star in her chest, she naturally went to Prithian. That's how that happened the first time.
Yeah.
And so she used that to try and move the portal.
Yeah. And so she just thinks about it really hard.
I don't know. I think she was just trying to like focus her power through the star on her chest was kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. I was picturing it like, I don't even know what movie it would have been from, but like a giant clock and the gears are like turning and everything. But I mean, that's clearly not how it works. She goes through the star in her chest. But when she opens the portal and Nesta's like, what do you want? Like, you've already taken enough from me. And Bryce like gets all teary and she's like, I need your help. And she's like, I don't want everything to like go to shit here. Like, I need your help. And I felt like that was like the one time where we see Bryce as vulnerable. And I really appreciated it.
Yeah.
No, you disagree?
No, I mean, I agree. Yeah, it was vulnerable of her to admit that she needed help. But I felt more like she came in being like, hey, I need something else from you, by the way. I know I kind of fucked you guys over, but I'm going to need that mask. And by the way, here's my parents. So
yeah,
I think I was upset enough about the collateral side of it that I didn't see that as vulnerable. I thought it as like a very calculated move.
Okay.
It was very calculated. Like she showed up to get the mask. The only way she thought she might convince them to give it to her was to shove her parents over there without Cooper.
Yep. Which that part of her, so my reaction changed during that whole scene because in the beginning I was like, oh wow, she's being so vulnerable. Like, look at her. She's actually asking for help. Yeah. And then I was like, what? Excuse me? I was livid when she threw her parents into Prithian.
I just, when we talked about before how I felt like Bryce had a little bit of a villain arc or wasn't acting like herself.
Yeah.
That was one of those ways. I mean, poor Cooper.
I know.
Who, Emil, right?
Yeah.
He's already been through so much shit and he's already lost all of his family once and he lost Sophie and he lost his parents and he's finally comfortable and reestablished in this new family. And I just couldn't believe that that was like an okay thing in her mind.
Yeah.
To separate them and have that be the collateral like that. And I know, again, she kind of tries to justify in her mind and being like, oh, well, it would have been too obvious to ask for Cooper to come too because that wouldn't have made sense, whatever. But that wasn't enough for me.
No, it wasn't for me either. And like Ember too. Poor Ember.
Yeah.
She literally has like another kid basically. And like now she's
forced to leave him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like such a 180 from how my impression of Bryce was and how she interacted with the kid when he was Emil before he was Cooper. And I felt like Crescent City 1 Bryce would never.
Absolutely.
And so that I really hated that reaction.
Did too. It just seems like she has changed so much. And I feel like I also felt that way when Sathya was asking her, like, okay, well, what are you going to do for the Fae? Like, clearly you're going to kill everybody, and now you're going to be the one that has to take over. Like, what's your plan? And she was like, I'm not doing anything for the Fae. And I was like, okay, but then, like, you're just going to let the whole world go to shit that you're trying to, which is exactly what Sathya was saying. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, your character is, like, not going in a direction that I like.
Yeah, I don't know.
What a bummer.
But she does end up getting the mask.
She does. Yep.
So maybe let's talk about the mask and how different it was in Midgard.
The fact that in the very beginning of the book, we have Nesta who is still struggling to take the mask off, and Bryce uses it so easily.
Yeah.
And so does Hunt.
Yeah.
And then they're able to take it off, no big deal whatsoever.
Yes.
Do you think it works differently in different worlds, or do you what do you think is going on with that?
I mean, Bryce makes comments a couple times about the star in her chest welcoming the power and things like that. So maybe the fact that it's through Thea's power that she's using the mask, and I think the mask was coming from I thought it was coming from a similar time, but then Regelis, right before he dies, makes that comment that says, "You have no idea what power you toy with, girl. The mask will curse your very soul," right before he dies. And there was, I thought, a part earlier that they talked about the mask being more from like the Asteri, or like even further back, right? Like even older stuff. So how old is the Dead Trove?
So that's like Asteri made the Dead Trove.
That's what I thought. And so I don't know. So I think there was a little bit of questions there on clearly having Thea's power helps her use it without being totally, well, but maybe she is being corrupted and she's just not aware of it.
Yeah.
But I think there's more to it, because she also makes a comment about it later where she says, "I think I can command the mask to do ... different things." And so I'm, again, maybe in the next book we're going to see that be opened up. That was something else that I didn't feel like was closed off nicely.
I agree.
Here. And the fact that, and for Hunt too, I didn't really understand how he said he could use it because he had a little bit of that maid power, and so he could use it for a little bit, and then when he ran out of that maid power from when they were fucking, that mask fell off. But I didn't understand that because I didn't remember everyone in Prythian that had used the mask being made.
Right.
Like, I know that Nesta was made, but the person from like way long time ago when Amren talked about having to chop off somebody's head because they like literally couldn't take it off.
Yeah.
I don't remember them being made. So is it just that the people who are made can put it on and take it off? And that like people who aren't made aren't, or like people who are made maybe aren't corrupted by it in the same way?
But then when Hunt's madeness goes away, it falls off.
Right. So I would have thought the opposite should happen. I would have thought it should stay glued to his face and be harder to take it off.
Yes. It didn't make sense to me either. I was like, one, that was way too easy. And two, like why it didn't make sense to me why he was able to use it even if he had some of that maid power. To me, I was like, he shouldn't have been able to use it at all.
Yeah.
That whole scene with Hunt and the mask, to me, it was just like, why did we have that in there?
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
But you know what I did like?
What did you like?
After, with Hunt, I mean, it takes him a little bit of a long time. We talked about it in the other episode. It takes him a little bit of a long time to accept he's this creature son thing of hell. But when he takes off Isaiah's crown or his like halo or whatever, I thought that was like a cool come to Jesus moment, you know, where it's like, okay, yeah, it's weird that I'm a son of hell, but also look at what good I can do for the world. And so I just, that was like a nice moment, I thought, for him to be able to take that off Isaiah.
When he like takes off his own, and I literally saw him as like hulking out.
Yeah.
It was like,
it was like growing to the big green man.
And then I was like, yay, finally. Like, let's come to terms with it. And then he does it for Isaiah too. And I did like that piece. And I did like that Hunt because he was finally stepping up.
Yeah.
Because we've talked a lot of shit about Hunt in the past episodes where there were some things that I liked. Yeah. There were some things.
And it was kind of interesting. I think it was in part 3, although I don't know that I have a specific note of it, where maybe it was even kind of around that scene actually where he removes the halo from Isaiah. It's after the harpy has come back as something else, and like the necromancy that happened with Hunt's lightning, and Bryce is taking them down, but he's like still so feral rage Hunt, of like, I have to protect my mate, and that she kind of has to talk him down to like chill out a little bit. I actually thought that was kind of cool to see him lose control.
Yes.
Because we don't see him like fall that heavily into that power very often. He is so tightly controlled so much of the time that it was cool to see him actually just be like, Kah!
Yeah, exactly. I like that we get to see that different version of Hunt, and finally, like, if we had to have a discussion about them actually being mates or not, that was one of the scenes where I could say, yes. They are. Yes. Because he was just like we've seen other mates act. And so that swayed me a little bit the other way.
I enjoyed that. And just to see him not cower for a moment.
Yes.
Because he is cowering for so much of it. He steps up in the end too.
He does, yeah.
I guess maybe let's jump forward to that if you want to. Maybe starting with Shahar and that. So, okay, I see your face and hear that, Tell me what was just focused on specifically the Shahar piece and getting into the mech suit that she was living in at that moment. Tell me about that. Ex-girlfriend that he was in love with and fought war for.
Yeah, that's basically where my mind goes. Like, we know all in Crescent City, he's basically talking to Bryce about how much he loved Shahar, and then he's like, he comes to this other point where he's like, yeah, but maybe she didn't actually love me back enough. And I don't know. It was just like wrapped up in a really pretty bow. And it was kind of cringy. And I don't know if I actually loved it. Like, I felt like we could have just done without it. Because again, as I was literally just saying, like, that is another piece where I think, hey, maybe him and Bryce like actually are mates. And then I was like, wait, maybe what?
I know. I think it was probably supposed to feel like a nice resolution or, kind of closing out of this storyline between them and, I don't know, having like a moment of peace in their relationship.
Yeah.
But to your point, I kind of just think I could have done without it. I didn't feel like that redemption moment or whatever really added so much to it.
I didn't either.
It felt a little... Yeah, just cheesy? Like a little cheesy, a little too unnecessary for me.
Yeah, me
like
too.
It's like it was a little sweet and a little bit meh.
Yeah, agreed. I absolutely agree.
But then he jumps through, right? So I guess what do you think of that? Jumping through the Mexi, that whole scene. Did you like the whole her floating in space and trying to like spider monkeying?
Spider monkey.
That's what I was imagining.
Yeah,
also.
Absolutely. That just makes me want to picture him as Edward.
I know. That is exactly what was going on, though. Because as soon as she said that she, like, was, like, grabbing around him or whatever, the first thing I thought was that spider monkey moment in Twilight when Bella, like, jumps onto his back or whatever, and he's, like, racing through the trees. Except for, imagine Edward racing through the trees, trying to shake off Bella. That was the equivalent of what was going on in my brain.
It's hysterical. Well, now that you say that, I like the scene so much better.
Except maybe more floating than running.
For real. They're just trying to move in space.
I think I was just sad because, me, I'm a big sci-fi space girl.
Yeah.
I hated it in this one.
Oh. And I guess maybe it didn't hit as hard because I don't read that much sci-fi.
I thought it was kind of lame.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seemed a little lame. That's for damn sure.
Also, just that none of the Asteri actually die. They just get sucked up into this black hole and or somewhere else, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think exactly like Throne of Glass, where Aelin kind of just like sucks them into a different world.
Yeah, actually, just like that. Never actually defeat their foes. They just pop them somewhere else.
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
because I always have no body, I'm not sold that they're dead. That's always what my reaction is.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It was
just a little too perfect ending, which back to your original point where you were asking about whether I think that this is going to be the end of Bryce and Hunt's journey. I think we're still going to see them a little bit because, like, I guess Bryce isn't even in power. So maybe this is just the end of their journey like that. And we're just going to focus on the other characters because it all just wrapped up
too nicely.
That
was the part that threw me to, like, the end of this book just wrapped up too nicely.
Yeah.
And okay, so I guess let's go back even a little bit then. Coming back to after all of the Fallen have guided this missile towards Regillus and he gets knocked off and into the black hole and, you know, Bryce is saved and whatever. And everybody holding open the portal for a little bit longer. I clearly had a lot of comparison moments in this book for me, but it reminded me, you know, in like Avengers Endgame when like everybody's shooting, all of them are like putting their power on Thanos or whatever. That was how that scene felt to me. It was like Avengers Unite, like everybody pulling open the portal for just a little bit longer for them to come back. But and I'm. This sounds bad that I wanted the main character to die, but I'm really sad because when Hunt is trying to resurrect Bryce with his lightning after she's like dead, and he like, says that the mask tells him that she is dead, and he's trying to, you know, resurrect her, and he's like, what had Regillus known about Hunt's own power that Hunt didn't? And there's all these things. I was like, if she had actually died there, I actually think that would have made for like a really compelling story going into the next one. Like it would have just like a totally different type of storyline.
I also wish that she would have just stayed dead, because when we have Jessica comes in and she's like, you know what, I will give my life for her. And I was more sad about losing Jessica than I was about losing Bryce.
Yeah.
And like, I was literally sobbing because I didn't want to lose Jessica.
I know.
But when I thought about losing Bryce, I was like, wow, that would have actually been the first character that I cared about that we lost during this whole book. And so, I unfortunately didn't care as much about
I know. Bryce I just think it would have made me care about Bryce's story more, like on reflection, if it had ended there with sacrifice.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny though, because it's supposed to be sweet, you know, that Jessica's trading her life for Bryce.
Yeah.
But also Jessica talked about how it was just such a curse to have this never ending life and never aging and never changing and stuff. So kind of seemed like a nice thing to be rid of for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was her
like convenient
plan all along.
Yeah.
And so do you think that that's going to transfer on to Bryce, that she's now going to have this curse?
I guess. That was my impression.
Yeah,
was that the curse
too.
was transferred from Jessica to Bryce.
So now Bryce just gets to live forever?
I guess. They have really long lives anyway, so after the drop, so I guess, is it that different? I don't know.
Oh, wait, you're right. Huh. I guess I did not think about that fact at all. Like, when they do the drop, they basically become immortal, so what would have been the difference then for Jessica?
I mean, they say basically immortal, not truly immortal. So, I mean, 15,000 years is, I think, longer than they live also.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I liked the parting scene with them, with Jessica and Bryce, though, talking about the books of Parthos. And the fact that Jessica says to Apollyon, oh, yeah, those books. I mean, don't you think if they were going to do something, I would do something with them right now? Like, gotcha.
But I'm like, I still think there's something with the books.
I do. I think it's going to come back, especially now that they're Bryce's. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely do. It just, I don't know. It seems a little, like, just like a little sassy moment with Apollyon that she was like joking around. But I think she was just totally bullshitting with him.
I think so too. I think so too.
But I like that Bryce at the end, like, builds a whole thing for the books, and she's like taking them under her wing basically, and like takes full responsibility for them.
Yeah.
It's like, yes,
they're hers to care for now at that point.
Yeah. I liked that.
So bouncing back to Ethan and Hypaxia going to the Bone Quarter to see what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name?
The Underking?
The Underking, thank you. This is before he's killed the Underking. And there's a couple interesting pieces in there. I think the first one maybe we'll go down is the whole second light part of it. So all of these souls, including Connor, have all collected themselves into this one bullet for the God Slayer rifle. Yes. And so they have this one bullet that they give to Ethan and say, make the most of it. This is wisely all that's left of us. Which was, kind of maybe a sweet way to wrap that up. Fast forward to Bryce, what we were just talking about with Bryce in this moment with Jessica in, I guess, the in-between for the afterlife or something. Yeah. And she says she sees all those people up on this grassy hill, which at first I was like, oh, so nice to see them. I'm like, hey, wait a second. Does anybody ever actually die and disappear in this story? Or are they just, everybody gets to come back always? Because that's how it felt. I'm like, okay, first Connor dies in the first book. And we're all like, oh my God, that's so sad. But then he's second light in the bone quarter. And then the second light goes in the blood. And we're like, oh, he's gone for real. Oh, but he's on the hill.
Yeah. Oh, here's the afterlife. Here's like the happy place that they're in. Like,
so did you think it was sweet to have this, like, oh, if you, what's eternal, what is made of love that can never be destroyed? Did you like that or did you not like that?
I guess like humans kind of have their same view.
Oh yeah, I gotta forget about that. Sorry, my bad.
Not my views specifically, but like a lot of people feel that way, and so I don't know. I mean, it's sweet. It's good to think that way, but. Yeah, then everything just gets wrapped up so nicely. And I
think it just made the second light thing not important then.
Absolutely.
Because they were so concerned about the second light being eaten by the Asteri and by the Underking and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, taking advantage of these people. What's the fucking difference then if they're second light and they're in that place or if they're in this eternal place? To me, there was no difference between those. So then that whole storyline of it mattering that they were taking the second light didn't matter at all.
Absolutely.
For me, that's how I took it. And so it made that less important.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, you're just in this in-between until you eventually go there anyway. Oh, they make it there anyway. Well, yeah, what was the point? You just get to suffer a little longer down here?
I guess.
You get to be more food for somebody else, but then you still get your happy ending.
Right. You still are going to end up in the happy place with everyone you love. So what's the difference?
Yeah, it was dumb. It was,
Well, tell me about how the bullet was used and what your thoughts were on that. The second light bullet. Do you remember?
Nope.
Oh, that's okay. The second light bullet, finally after changing hands a bunch of times, right? I think Ethan is carrying it and then he gives it to Therian and Therian's carrying it and he finally gives it to Bryce or whatever. It's kind of coming down the hallways of this Asteri palace. And Bryce is winnowing around or, teleporting around or whatever with Hunt. And he's like, pachoo! And then they move again. He's like, pachoo! And he move again, pachoo! Up towards the first light core.
Yes.
And then finally she takes the gun and he's like, wachow!
And gets the
bullet
core.
right into the core.
Yep.
Sorry for all that.
Which ended up being a kill switch for the planet.
Right. Yeah. Right. So just that being the use of the bullet, because they were already almost broken through it anyways, right? Like he had already beaten that thing down, gone through a good chunk of the layers to get to that core. Did you feel, was that like a big enough moment that having that be all the second light souls felt worth it? Was that a satisfaction moment?
No, I thought they were supposed to kill an Asteri with it.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get the core was supposed to be, well, we're getting rid of all the Asteri with it, which
but that's
I guess
not actually,
they did. Yeah, isn't that when the black hole opens?
Yeah. Yeah, it is, but I mean, they're not really, they're just out of Midgard. They're not actually gone.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Who knows?
It's funny because I know logically that was a big moment in the fight scene to have Bryce open that up because that's what shoved all the Asteri in there. But for whatever reason, it still didn't feel very impactful to me.
Yes, absolutely. It was like the whole scene just seemed like, oh, it's all falling in place. It's all falling into place.
I know. Although I will say the like image of them bouncing around and pew-pewing at the first like core.
Do you want to know? It's actually funny that I'm picturing in my head right now, but I didn't when I read it. So go back to Spider Monkey. I pictured Hunt on Bryce's back.
Kind of.
Pew pew. You go this way. Pew pew. It's just like this big man on top of it.
I did have a little bit of that. Like it felt like a little bit of a, I don't know. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
Oh my gosh. Do you know what I just remembered that we have not talked about yet?
Tell me.
When Rune shoots Lydia. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I feel like there's a lot of, we haven't talked about Rune and Lydia very much at all.
I know.
Yeah, when shoots Lydia, I don't understand why that was his, like, I can understand he was trying to stop her from going after her sons because he felt like she was going to do something stupid because she was being too emotional and jumping into what she knew was a trap. But I don't understand how the solution was him shooting her.
Agreed. I'm like, when would that ever be your first thought? Did not make sense to me in the slightest. And it didn't actually give him like the upper hand. So it was like, what?
If anything, it hurt her more because then Pollux shows up and she's like not all there, you know?
Yes, exactly. And then she can't defend herself. And, oh my God, it was so dumb. I felt like in this book, characters are just making the dumbest decisions.
Well, I guess it will. I mean, you know, they end the book with Rune and Lydia being all happily ever after in the apartment below Bryce and Hunt. Yikes.
What?
I guess magical sound blocking, but still, I like couldn't really believe that. But it's just, it's like funny that he goes from shooting her to save her and then admits that she's his mate like almost immediately afterwards. And then by the end of the book, they're already like, oh, happily ever after. After she was like, I will never forgive you. Never.
Yes. And he's like, I will never forgive you either. Well, like, because in the beginning of the book where he's like at the wall, he's like, I will never forgive you. And then she's like, well, I won't forgive you either. And now they're like, guess what? We love each other.
I hadn't even drawn that comparison between Rune at the beginning of the book and Lydia when she was getting shot. Oh, that's funny. I hadn't compared that at all.
Oh my gosh.
That's actually really funny.
I do like that when they get the boys back and she's like, you can repay me by saving my sons. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was a really good like character arc for Rune to be like, listen, like I'm gonna protect your mom, like she is my main priority. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you better. Yeah. And they were like, that's my mom.
I know. Rune and Hind feel so much more like mates than Bryce and Hunt do. And it is sad for me because I know they aren't, I mean, there's maybe supposed to be sort of the main characters, but I do think this was supposed to be a nice conclusion to Bryce and Hunt's story. So I feel like it was so overshadowed by Rune and Lydia. And some of it is because their story is new to us. Everybody loves a slow burn. You know, they're the ones that are just coming in. And now we've had 3 books of Bryce and Hunt being together. Right. So maybe people are just tired of it and it feels stale. Mm-hmm. But
I wasn't tired of Reese and Feyre.
That's true. That's actually really true. So I don't know, I liked their relationship better. But
oh my gosh, I loved their relationship.
God, but speaking of Lydia's sons, you were just talking about them and being like, yeah, you better protect my mom. What do you think of Bryce basically calling her sons baggage?
Again, another form of Bryce not being Bryce.
I know. And she does backpedal a little bit and she's like, well, I didn't mean baggage, you know, basically implying that it was just that she knew Lydia's mind wouldn't be in the right place because she was too worried about her sons.
Still not okay.
Man, the way it came off was so heartless.
Like this Bryce that was trying to save all of the humans and save their world and everything. It was like, I was speechless. Granted, I wasn't speaking to anybody while I was reading this book, but my mind went blank.
Oh my God, you're hilarious. God, you're so funny. That was quite the moment for sure.
It really was. And it just, I think that was kind of my last straw for Bryce in this book. And now, so Bryce is a character. Now she's got all 3 parts of Thea's power. And so she has
the third part now too? I thought she only has 2 of 3.
So she's got
the one that she took from Perithian. And she got the one that she took in Avalon.
And her part that she has in her.
She already had a third?
Descendant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I must have misread that because I didn't realize that she ended it. I thought she still ended it with only 2/3, but maybe I misread that.
Oh. I mean, maybe I'm misreading it too. No. I thought that she already had a third.
There was a little bit of confusion because I thought the third was like, nobody knows where it is. Me. I don't know. But I don't know what her power was, because you're right, because she had some of Thea's starlight or whatever, but it was her starlight wasn't her like power. It wasn't one of those 1/3 powers.
Oh, see, yeah, then I was very confused.
I think everybody was. There was a lot of that, honestly, through this whole book. Even though there was so much info dump, none of it was like clear to me.
And even the things that
were supposed to be clear.
That is so weird that now that you say that, I feel like ACOTAR is so clear, especially after rereading it. Like, we just reread Crescent City, and I felt like this one especially was really hard to wrap my mind around.
Yeah, we talked about it before, but I kind of think that SJM bit off more than she could chew when she started writing this book, and we know that she's rewritten it at least once. I completely scratched it and started again.
Yeah.
And this still, and I know that we had some of our followers say this too, that it felt like a first draft.
Yeah.
And I felt like that too. And I think maybe the concept of these merging worlds was like a really interesting concept for her, but I think it was really hard to execute that in comparison to when she was all within one world.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that was an easier scope than trying to fit these other things together. And I think that bringing in all of those different pieces just made the importance get lost a little bit of the pieces that we should look at as a reader.
It's a really good way to put it, actually, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I honestly think that was one of the main reasons why it wasn't a 5-star read, too.
Yeah.
It's because it was just like so hard to read and be excited about the characters and understand the plot points.
Yeah, there's a difference between getting lost because there's a mystery that you're trying to solve and getting lost because the information presented to you isn't clear enough.
Right.
And I think this was one of those information isn't clear enough versus...
I think so too.
Like, 'cause I don't think it was supposed to be a mystery. I think she was trying to tell us what was going on and there was just over our head.
You're absolutely right. It's not like in Crescent City 1 where we're very clearly supposed to be confused about what's happening because you'll figure it out later. We'll keep incorporating these pieces. Yeah, this was kind of a wrapping up of like the first part of the series and it's still just like, we have so many questions.
Yeah. One of those questions I have is more around Erd and maybe the gods or the life forces of the world in general. But when Ethan and Hypaxia are in the Bone Quarter and Ethan notices the statue of Erd and says that there's symbols on the bowl and all over the body like tattoos. And Ethan says it's oddly familiar. And later, maybe the Underking says that Erd was not a goddess, but a force that governed worlds, a cauldron of life, and that it was actually called Wyrd, like WYRD, the same as like word marks from Throne of Glass.
Yeah.
And so I think we're supposed to assume that Erd/Wyrd/ the cauldron, I guess, are all one life force between these 3 planets.
Yep.
And so in general, then maybe wonder there's other gods like Thur or other things that kind of get brought up. And if we know that Erd is real and that, not that we didn't think Erd was real, but you know what I mean? Now that Erd is a more tangible being of some sort, it makes me wonder if the other ones are also going to be more important and if they're going to play in. Because we see a variety of gods get mentioned in ACOTAR in the previous books.
Yes.
And not really come up, like they're more just gods in the background, right? It's more just a part of religion or culture.
Yep.
And so now that we know that Erd is tangible, I want to know if those gods in ACOTAR are going to come up in ACOTAR 5.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also have that same question. And I loved that this connecting piece between the worlds was actually pretty clear.
Yes.
Because it was the one where I was like, oh, we know that. Oh my gosh, we know that. Oh my gosh, it's the same thing in all of the different worlds. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that comes back to connect, because we also know SJM is working on a new series. Mm-hmm. And so just personal opinion, I feel like she's coming back and she's going to do more Throne of Glass stuff, because it kind of seems like it's like, it has to come back.
It was popular enough that if she did a spinoff, I think it would still do well.
Oh, I think absolutely. I think it would, which would be so exciting.
Yeah, that would be really fun. That'd be really fun to see.
Yeah, especially because we know that Aelin is a direct descendant of, Lydia is a direct descendant of Aelin. And so if we can kind of see like how that family lineage goes down, like I would love that. Mm-hmm.
And there are still just so many places left open for exploring of worlds, because Regelis makes a comment to Bryce about, or I think it's Regelis, maybe it was Polaris before he dies, but
well, he's trying to get shut up by Regelis.
Yeah, one of the Asteri when they're talking, and they make some comment to Bryce when they're kind of trying to make a deal about how they could show her how to open a door to any world she wanted to go to, that she already has that power, and they could show her how to do it. And they talk about the language from the horn in her back, like that tattoo being the language from the Asteri home world. And so all these little pieces, and again, this book tried to leave it off as like, oh, happy ending, tied with a bow. We passed back all of our stuff and that we borrowed, and now we're good to go. But Bryce also leaves the Star Sword / Gwydion in Prythian for Nesta, saying, hey, you have that star on your back. This is the Star Sword. Maybe that means something. You should check it out.
Yeah, like, hey, you should look into this because clearly it's important for you. Mm-hmm.
So do you think that leaves reason for Bryce to return to Prythian at any point? Or do you think that'll give anybody in Prythian access to come back to Midgard?
That's kind of where I thought it was leaving off, was like keeping that open connection. But who knows? I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is exactly how it's going to go, and then it goes a completely different way. Mm-hmm. But I hope that connection is still open, because clearly, like, our characters loved each other from these different worlds. So I would hope that connection would stay open and we can have more crossover in the future. But
yeah, I just, right now, unless something crazy happens with Gwydion, it doesn't feel like they have a reason to engage with each other, and it doesn't feel like Bryce has a reason to explore new worlds.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm going to be curious to see what she does to make them connect again, because I don't think she would have them connect only for this one book,
right,
and then have them operate independently again. I'm assuming that through the next ACOTAR books or through the next Crescent City books, that it'll be important. But I wonder if it was really just to say that they share a common enemy and that they share some common magic, if that really was the whole point, and maybe she doesn't need to connect them anymore.
I could see, because I feel like at the end of ACOTAR, we had some things that were kind of left a little open. But I don't know if you'd necessarily need to open worlds to finish that. But so Bryce and Nesta would have to meet again, because Nesta now has the swords. Mm-hmm.
Nesta's got the sword, Truth Teller, and the mask.
Yes. So she's got the entire Dread Trove.
Except for the horn.
Except for the horn. And so that's what I'm thinking. If she wants to open another world, she'll have to find Bryce again.
Yeah, I don't know that she can do that without the horn.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So I think you're right. So that's why I feel like it has to be Bryce initiating it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that they have another way. Unless, but they did talk about the prison being a thin place and stuff. And so maybe other people can access something through that thin place and be able to move. What?
Or what about the Pond of Starlight?
I was wondering that was one of the ones, because I feel like the Pond of Starlight must be one of those thin places.
Yeah.
And yeah, that made me wonder too, if similar to the Northern Rift, how that was a portal straight to hell. I wonder if the Pond of Starlight is going to be like some connection through to somewhere else.
Yeah. That'd be cool to see that come full circle.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Other than that, I'm like, I don't know why they would interconnect again. I want them to.
Right. Obviously, I want them to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I can't think of why they would. I don't know.
Yeah.
You brought up some really good points, though.
Thanks. You're welcome. Okay. One thing that we still did, it's like a small detail, but something that I made note of. We talk again about that amulet that Bryce wears that she got from Jessica. And originally, she got it from Jessica because Jessica said that it was protection against the books that she was guarding, the books of Parthos. Mm-hmm. But, you know, then later when there's the Crystallos demon and stuff, it also protects Bryce from that. And then as fast forward again to Jessica trading her life for Bryce's, and Bryce is dead and they're in this other place. And Jessica makes a comment that it's not just protection against those things, but it's also a link to Midgard itself.
Yes. And
that's part of how Bryce comes back to life, right? Mm-hmm. It's like using that connection back to Midgard through the amulet. But one little, and maybe this is like a way too out there theory, but one little bit that then I had in the back of my mind, like, well, what if somebody else now in one of the other worlds is able to get a hold of this amulet? What if that's a way, the same way that Bryce can use the star in her chest to guide her towards Perithian? Yeah. What if somebody on the other side, like say Nesta, could use the amulet to be able to like direct her towards Midgard, so that we can start to have like not like just Bryce having to be initiating all of these things?
Oh, that's really interesting. Actually, it's funny because I didn't put that importance together. I was like, oh, cool, it's a connection to Midgard. And I was like, well, that's interesting. It's different than we thought. But I did never think of how it could come into play.
I mean, I might be reading too much into it. I think but that's cool. There was a lot of conversation about that amulet across the 3 Crescent City books, and importance out of there's only a handful of them, and they're, you know, ever so old, like the 15,000 years ago time frame, right? And so this is back when people were first crossing into Midgard, which makes me think that maybe they were also an important then for people who are going from Midgard back to Perithian and back or something, like, because there was a little bit of in between time before that door was closed is what my impression was. And so I wonder if that amulet will be able to create a connection for someone else, because it worked for Bryce now. Yeah, cool. But there's so much conversation about that amulet.
And it's like it can't just stop.
I don't think it'll die there. Yeah, I think that will mean something. Or maybe that's what helps people. Maybe that's what helps a Reaper return from the dead to the living or something, because that can pull them back to Midgard. I don't know. It was
a really good way to put it.
Out there theory.
No, I like it. I like it because I was like, that's cool. And I just
that's cool. Next page.
That's pretty much what I thought.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So now that we're done with the book.
Well, last bit. Ari. That's the only other thing I want to say. Ari came up, but didn't really matter in this book.
Yeah.
Right? We freed her from the astronomer. Mm-hmm. Was fighting for the Viper Queen. Mm-hmm. She kind of gets transferred somewhere else so that she doesn't have to fight Ethan.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the book, when Tharian goes back to the meat market, Ari is there and is like, what do you think you're doing, man? This is a bad idea. Yes. So I think she's going to come back in the next book and play a semi-important role, because there was so much stress on there aren't any dragons around anymore, and there was all this stress about freeing her, and then she's with the Viper Queen but not totally, and she's got all this power that other people don't know, but she's a slave. But now we know that Hunt can also break some of the, you know, I don't know, maybe the halo is different than the slave stuff,
I wonder, but I thought that that's what it was. I thought that the Asteri were putting the slave bonds on them. So
I don't know. So there's in general, I just want to say that's one note where because we leave off at very end of the book, we've got happily ever after, Bryce and Hunt. Bryce writes off, says there's no royal families. None of them matter. If you were royal before, you were shit matter now. So we've got that chaos about to ensue there. We've got Ethan is prime of the wolves, and the wolves are slowly returning to Midgard, or to Nunathion.
Yep.
And he doesn't know if it's from Perry or because of him or whatever, but they're coming back slowly. Hypaxia is now head of the House of Flame and Shadow. Yep. TBD on how that impacts all of the creatures of House of Flame and Shadow, right? Because the Underking isn't there anymore. There's no more Second Light. Dead Quarter is going to be a different place.
Yep.
So we've got that. And then we've got Tharian. And he's got Sathia who has
disappeared.
His wife is MIA.
Yep.
He's got this sort of debt to the River Queen.
Yep.
And we've got Ari popping back up with the Viper Queen. And the Viper Queen still got a vendetta against Tharian. Yes. And he's just lucky that he has friends in high places. But all of those things, I can see why that leads up to Tharian being key in the next book, because he has the most unfinished storylines in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're going to see a lot of Tharian. We're going to see a lot of Ethan. But I think that Bryce and everything is going to be kept more in the background, because she basically says, you guys can govern yourselves. Like, we're going to have like a democracy.
Figure your shit out.
Figure your own shit out. Yeah, I am a little bit surprised that she didn't step up. Like,
yeah, I thought she would grow into it. I know she doesn't want to, but I thought she would grow into it. She'd be like, hey, well, at least on the interim until we fix some stuff, I can see why this is needed.
Yes, and she just did not.
That was the one time where I felt like her party girl attitude was really actually showing, and it wasn't a joke.
Yes.
So I felt like that's her being like, I don't want to deal with that shit. Have fun.
Yeah, you guys do it on your own. Bye. Like, why would you spend all of this time and effort and sorrow into doing all of this if you're literally not going to be a part of rebuilding it? It's so unfortunate how much I loved Bryce in House of Earth and Blood, and how finishing out HOFAS, like, I like some side characters better than I like her.
I mean, Lydia was the goat for HOFAS, yes, clearly.
Literally love her so much. Oh my God.
And I mean, Rune too. Besides shooting Lydia in the leg, I still love Rune too.
Even though we were like, what the fuck are you doing? He's still my favorite.
Yeah. He's great.
I know. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to come for the next book. I don't either. Know.
It felt even though there are open storylines, it felt too cleanly tied off.
It did.
It felt like you could finish reading this book and not have to continue to the next books.
I wonder if people felt that way about A Court of Wings and Ruin too, because I know there are people that didn't read.
I think you could. I also think you could read a Court of Wings and Ruin and not continue the series, and you would be satisfied.
Yeah, which is what this felt like too.
Yeah, that is exactly what it felt like. But I think that was just interesting, and maybe I'm guessing on the. There's 4 houses, and we've had 3 books on 3 of the houses, so the 4th and final book will be the last house, but.
That would be weird.
But it seems weird to switch it only for one book. I think that's the difference. Is at least with ACOTAR, there was novella, and then now there's going to be more books, like multiple books on other people. But if there's just one on other people in Crescent City, I don't think I'm going to have enough time to care as deeply.
What if the 5th book is going to be like the House of Happily Ever After? Like when everybody dies.
Maybe they'll form a new house. Who knows?
Who knows? Because it would just seem weird that you would only have the 4 books and 3 of them were 2 of the same people.
I will say a lot of the stuff with the Ocean Queen and their civilizations being there before the time of the Asteri and sinking into the ocean. And there was like a lot of conversation in general about what was happening underwater, or the groups that were there now. I can see why that's what's left.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Who knows how that's actually going to be incorporated. Well, this ends our SJM deep dives for a while.
Yeah, we won't have any more SJM books for a long time.
Yeah. But this was fun, but this was a lot. This book, there's a reason we had to do it in 4 parts.
It's fatty.
It's huge.
It's fatty.
And we learned so much, and I feel like it was such a dense book that, like, I'm okay with going with something a little bit lighter for a while. Yeah. This was a lot.
Yeah. So check out our socials or from our link tree or whatever if you want to see what books we're probably covering coming up, and you can read along and listen with us.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, guys. Give us a follow, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Bye.